Hello and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. Wellness Wednesday is sponsored by 3W Medical for Women, a nonprofit medical clinic offering free of charge or low-cost reproductive health services to women in the Seattle area, regardless of income or insurance status. 3W does not profit off the reproductive health choices women make. The information shared in this podcast is the opinion of the speaker or speakers. Medical information is not intended as individual medical consultation, but for general education only. Always consult your own health professional for personalized advice regarding medical decisions. And if you're in the Seattle area, consider making an appointment to consult with us. I'm Lauren Whitting, Office Manager of 3W Medical for Women and the host of today's podcast. Hello there, and welcome back to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. My name is Lauren. I am your host for today's podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today I have with me Christi Emmons, our nurse practitioner here at 3W, one of them. And today we are going to talk about body image, self-image, and how that, affects our health, weight management, all the fun things like that. So thank you so much for joining me today, Christi.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So first off, let's just lay the groundwork on defining body image and defining, what that is to us and our health versus, maybe what we think of self-image and what that looks like.
Okay, so they're very similar, but self-image, if you think about it, it's something that starts early in childhood.
Yeah.
So we develop these personal views and mental pictures of ourself that's reinforced by the people that we're around.
Right.
So family, relatives, siblings, teachers, and relationships reinforce both positive and negative self-image. And sometimes, in childhood, you don't always have control over these things.
No, you don't.
But at some point, I would hope that people could surround themselves with positive people.
Totally.
And make healthy choices because it does impact life, health, emotional, spiritual, mental well-being.
For sure. Well, and I don't think we always know as children what's going to affect us and what we're going to hold on to. I think a lot of people, they go through therapy and there's a lot of blame placed on certain, people that raised them, and they did the best they could. A lot of times, there's obviously a lot of abuse and things that happened that was bad. But there's a lot of people who were raised by parents that did the best they could, but said certain things or saw how they talked about their body image, and it affected them. And I think that's so interesting as someone who wants children and is around people who are raising kids of you can do, what you think is the best. And still there could be moments where you as the child latches on to something that was said even about themselves. My mom always reinforced my body image. Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. You're strong. You're athletic. Your legs are meant for, working out and having fun, and they take you places. But then I would hear her talk about her body.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
And it's so interesting that then I became self-conscious about things after hearing what she talked about, when it was only positive for me. There was never nitpicking on my weight or what I ate. It was always so positive, but still you latch onto those things. And it's so interesting to me.
Yeah, it is interesting because if you look at different articles or research, they will say there's this confusion if a child is given nothing but positive reinforcement. If the parent then is self-critical, it can do a number of confusion on the child.
Yeah,
so that's interesting that you bring that up.
I look like her, or I see, we look alike, or we have similar body types. And then you're like, but why is she saying that about herself? But then I am perfect the way I am, It's so interesting.
It is. It makes you stop and kind of question what you're hearing or be a little bit more analytical of yourself, even though you've been given really nourishing comments from your mother.
Yeah.
So it is interesting.
Yeah.
And so body image, moving into body image, that's the perception, a unique perception of how we feel, think, and react to our own perception of our physical attributes and our characteristics.
Right.
So again, things that we can do, and it's interesting because I like what you brought up about how I think it's a really healthy approach if as an adult or even a young teenager, if you can go, you know what? My parents did the best they could do.
Right.
Because you can't change it.
Totally.
So if I can encourage anybody, it's picking up where you're at and knowing you have a choice
Right.
to move forward
Totally.
and change things for yourself.
Right.
And not depend on the past or really perseverate on the past.
Right. Right.
But move forward.
And then how does that relate into, so as we are defining self-image and body image as a young child, going off of that, if there is negative kind of distortions or issues within our body, what are the ways that people can go about that? Because I hear a lot on social media and different things of body dysmorphia. That's a huge, big thing of like perceiving your body differently than it actually is. And like that psychological, it's defined as a medical condition like anorexia or bulimia. And I think most women, it's like when they talk about body dysmorphia, it's I'm perceiving my body to be bigger than it actually is what I hear a lot of like sometimes when diet and exercise gets unhealthy and they're thinking, I'm stuck in this mindset of how I was maybe or how I'm perceiving myself when that's not actually what's happening in the mirror, you know?
Yeah.
So how do we as women specifically, as being 3W medical for women, go about shaping that body image if it is disordered or affected?
Well, that's a really good question because a lot of the issues actually stem from the media and social media is right there with it, if not more. And so one of the problems that people get into, and it's just like this never-ending circuit, is trying to capture their self-image and compare it and constantly comparing it to other people. And I think what people forget is that when people are posting images, oftentimes it might be the best of 40.
Right.
It's not maybe the true reality of what they look like. And things can have filters and things can be softened.
Right.
For me, I find it to be a waste of time. Like don't even and so it's difficult, but you have to break the cycle and the habit of wanting to compare yourself.
Yeah.
Or even looking at maybe an ideal body image, but rather doing some internal self-work first by accepting your unique self and then working maybe with a primary care provider and talking about what are some positive goals that are reasonable, and that's really important because you don't want to make these unrealistic goals because everybody is unique in their shape, size, height, genetics.
Right.
There's so many things that impact what your potential end result can be. But if you're partnering with a primary care physician, then maybe they can help you come up with a small list of things that you can work on and then have somebody to check in with. And of course, you could also use counseling services or something like that. But it's really making reasonable choices, but also recognizing maybe present choices at this time where people need to break certain habits.
Right.
And if it happens to be maybe too much time on social media or comparing and contrasting yourself to other people, that's a really good starting place to just stop doing that. And I know it's easier said than done, but you have to kind of pare it down because the research shows Facebook, social media, these things can really cause a lot of issues with people. And we have tons of links that I've included today that talk about this.
Yeah.
They talk about the negative impact of always comparing yourself to other people or these different social media outlets where they've actually researched. Has it had a positive influence on young kids and teenagers or a negative influence?
Yeah. I was watching a video the other day and they were saying, as humans, we were never intended to have so much, not only negative, critiques of our body through social media. And I have like 2,000 followers on Instagram. So 2,000 people are looking at me, whatever I post. And even if it's positive affirmation of, oh my gosh, you look so great, that's damaging because I was not meant to be, praised that much. Because that can alter our self-image of like, wow, do I only look good when I look like that? Or in the positive side, when there's bullying or critiques of like, oh my gosh, somebody's, for social media influencers a lot when they have millions of followers. Did you gain weight? Did you, and then comparing them on, they look so good. Well, is that, a big thing is Facetune. That's an app that you can edit your body. It's very well, done, honestly, of like, that looks so realistic. Then you look at them, there'll be different posts that show like their unfacetuned body. And it's like, well, that's totally a different person. I mean, it looks so different. And it's really interesting to me, your comments about how they can be negatively affected, the social media. I think that's huge. People getting so caught up in it because you're getting positive and negative enforcement. If you're posing at the gym and you're looking really good in the lighting and people are like, oh my gosh, you look so good. Like you've lost weight or you just look so fit. You're going to want that reinforcement again. And that's too much. That's an unrealistic amount of attention almost.
Right.
I have, young cousins and relatives of like so caught up in it. They've only known that, because they're 12 and social media came, really big 10, 15 years ago. And they're always posting things and the comments are like, oh my gosh, you look so perfect. Like 30 comments underneath their pictures. I'm like, that's not normal. That's not normal. You're not going, I'm not going to school and people are like, oh my gosh, Lauren, you look so amazing. 18 people. You wouldn't do that. And then if they post something and they don't get those, what's that going to do to their self-image?
Right. And so it's kind of this cycle, but it's a self-perpetuated cycle.
Yeah.
Unless you really step back and look at the whole situation with a broad view.
Yeah.
You don't realize it's not just the negative, but it's also the positive.
Totally.
If you have positive and you're relying on that to get you through every day,
right,
then that's where it becomes kind of this addictive process.
Totally.
And for me, I just quite honestly see it as a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because you could take that time and go for a walk or go for a hike or go to the gym. And I laugh sometimes because I don't do social media and I will look around and see the youth just taking tons and tons of pictures of themselves to the point of, I'm sorry, but annoyance.
Yeah.
And I often would like to say, hey, if you put your phone down, you might get through your workout a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Because I see it mostly probably when I'm at the gym.
Yeah.
Or maybe if I'm shopping or something, which is a rare occasion. But the funny thing is when I was researching for our discussion, there's actually a lot of literature out there that will correlate the more you take selfies of yourself, it reduces your self-image.
Oh my gosh.
So it's really interesting.
That is so interesting. Well, yeah, and I'll see people who post things from the gym and it's like they almost want the illusion of like, look, I went to the gym today and that look at me being, successful and on top of it, I'm here at 6 a.m. And it's like, that's awesome. But why do you need the affirmation from others?
Right.
Because really, then it creates an unhealthy balance with working out because working out is so great for our body. We've done a lot of talks about that. But if we're associating working out or getting fit with the attention we're going to receive, that is not going to be a longevity of a commitment to yourself.
Right.
To just because beauty fades and your life's going to change, your body changes as you age. And if you're not creating, good foundations with exercise and diet, then it's fleeting, right? And you have a really great workout routine and I feel like a really healthy body image relating to that. I think a lot of people talk these days of if you want to change your body, that's not body acceptance or that's not a positive self-image. What some popular media says, if you want to change your body, you must not love your body. What's your thoughts on that of like maybe modifying your body to lose weight if that's something they want to do and that's something that would make them feel healthy, but still having that positive self-image while accomplishing that?
Well, it's funny. You have raised so many really good questions. So I'm going to try and remember everything that you said. And as you were talking about how there's these people and they develop this, they're kind of setting themselves up for failure because they're approaching, like, let's say the gym and they're just doing all these selfies of, look at me, I'm here at the gym. And it's distracting from the task at hand, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I guess I would suggest pulling back and recognizing right there that it's defeating the whole purpose. So when you want to change body image, I think it has to start from an internal desire.
Yeah.
It can't be somebody else asking you to do it. It can't be directed by somebody else. You can have suggestions and partner with friends or a provider or a counselor.
Yeah, because that, I think provides accountability
Exactly.
of like, oh, we're going to go to the gym together. And that's
Exactly.
a fun thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes people need a little bit of motivation to get going.
Yeah.
And so if they have to meet a girlfriend every Tuesday and Thursday for part of their workout, that's
Yeah.
great.
Right.
If they have like-minded approaches and they can support each other. And that's what I would say. I would say you really have to focus on surrounding yourself with people that are going to provide encouragement and speak truth into your life and accountability into your life.
Yeah.
And so when you approach exercise, I would say approach it more from the meditation type of point, where it's a form of recharging or relaxation.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'll teach many of my patients about is what is a specific form of exercise doing at the cellular level. So for example, if somebody has insulin resistance, I talk about if they're increasing cardiovascular exercise, how it's increasing their body's ability to utilize their insulin that's naturally made by their body to help them metabolize sugars more effectively, which in the long run, a lot of people don't realize this, but elevated sugars are related to high cholesterol as well, often. So how those things can work together, not to mention that it increases focus, decreases fatigue, it decreases pain. It acts as and can mimic an anti-anxiety, an antidepressant, endorphins, neurotransmitters. I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
And I usually do with my patients because I'm not selling it to change how they look, but rather to give them longevity from the benefits at the cellular level.
Right.
And this is another selling point that I tell people. I mean, a lot of people just don't have the motivation to go out and exercise.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've struggled with, throughout my life. And let me tell you, I can remember some vivid comments made to me when I was in middle school, and those things can be really hurtful. And it's in the literature. It can be really hurtful what we say to people, and it depends on where they are in their life and how they hang on to things. But people that influence you, again, are going to be family and relatives, but your peers and teachers.
Yeah.
So you never know when you're going to make or break somebody's day. So we have to be really careful about how we say things.
Yeah. And be sensitive to our intention can be pure, but we don't know how people are going to react to that.
Exactly.
If you tell someone, going to the gym is really great, you don't know what other things they might be holding on to that could make them feel like, well, putting two together that you didn't mean to do, but it's like, oh, well, I was told to go to the gym when I was little and it was because I was overweight and people were bullying me about it or something like that, where then they attach these negative connotations to exercise, to weight loss that cause, distress, really.
Right. Or
which
maybe
is hard.
It's too crowded at the gym.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I've never really been a gym person until later on in my life when I honestly got chased by too many dogs and my husband was getting tired of it. So
when you were out on a run?
When I was out with my kids.
Aww.
And so he wanted...
This is an isolated environment. I'm not going to get chased by a dog.
I know. So he was trying to help me come up with a better idea of how it would be safer so he wouldn't have to worry about the situation. And so he brought me to the gym and taught me the gym. And I have to be honest, when I first started going to the gym, I was like, I hate going to the gym because I really... I'm not one of those people that's going to do my hair and makeup before I go to the gym. I'm going to roll out of bed because I'm going to go get hot and sweaty.
Yeah.
And it's not about a social engagement. Now, one thing I will say is with my geriatric population, 65 and older, that is part of their social structure.
Yeah.
And so there's so many elements of exercise that are so important from early childhood all the way up until death. Really, we need to keep active. That's what our bodies were meant to do.
Don't use it, you lose
exactly,
it, right?
Exactly. And so even as parents, what I wish, and I'll broach this topic when I'm working with pediatrics, for example, I will tell the parents, you have to lead by example, because if the kids see that this is just part of the normal routine, then they adapt to it and get used to it. So one of the other things that I was going to say moments ago, I just now recalled, was I'll sell it to my patients by telling them, okay, if you're missing this motivation, make a commitment with another person. Signing up for a class is helpful, but also
financial.
knowing, yes,
I have a gym that if I don't cancel within 8 hours on my class, I get charged like $10.
Yeah, and for some people, that's a motivator.
And when I wake up at 6, I think, okay, am I gonna let myself get charged $10 or I'm gonna go to the class because that'll annoy me and I'm not getting my workout in.
Right, and you're not. So it's like two things.
Yeah.
But what I tell people is, if you try and do something, as hard as it is, if you try and do something for 30 days, it becomes a habit.
Yes.
And then your body will actually kind of crave it.
Right.
And so it's a process, and sometimes we move forward and sometimes we go back. But that's how I like to sell exercise to people.
Well, and I think it's not always all or nothing either. I think people think who've maybe been in the cycle of like in a workout routine, then out of one, of like going 2 days a week, if that's what needs to get you in and it's too overwhelming to go 5 days a week, is better than 0 days a week. And then as your body gets comfortable and you're back in your routine, 3 days a week, and increasing it every time. And I think I've met women who get really in hard headspaces of negative connotations with working out because they were in a bad body image state, because they were working out as a punishment or they were working out as a means to change their body aesthetically. And then when they got to the goal weight or the, look they wanted, and they still were sad and they still were insecure and they still could found things about their body that they were not unhappy with. And I think it's interesting. It really is an internal, body image is internal, and we can try to change our body and have our workout routine. But if your mental state is a negative connotation with working out, a negative connotation with your body, the losing the weight's not going to change that. A lot of people, they lose weight, they feel so great, they feel positive. But I think a lot of people from my generation have the negative connotation with their body. They have all these things they're seeing on Instagram and Facebook, and they don't see that in themselves. They lose the weight, they still feel sad, and then they want to attack the working out as the issue of like, or the dieting or whatever it is, as like, that made me sad, and so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to accept myself for who I am, which is great. Accepting ourselves for who is amazing, but weaponizing the like the healthy habits that made you feel sad because you didn't get the results you wanted mentally is not the way to go.
Think of exercise not as necessarily a form of weight loss, but a form of sustenance. So it's like changing your whole thought. Rather than thinking about what your meal's going to be, thinking about it differently. Like, I'm eating so that I have the sustenance and the energy to live.
Right.
Rather than looking forward to, what's my next meal?
Yeah.
And I would say if people really give it a fair try and they partner with somebody that can give them some elbow support and encouragement and direct them in the right areas, and they do a real good commitment of maybe 30 days, they'll start to feel better inside. It doesn't mean their body's going to change over time. Everybody's body is going to be different. And that's where accepting yourself, your unique physique, but learning what healthy choices are, what healthy limits are, what is my ideal body weight, and if you're not that, how can I achieve that and do it safely? And it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it takes a lot of commitment and time, but I think approaching exercise in a different frame of mind.
Yeah.
And then also the thing about food and weight loss, that's another area where if you over restrict yourself, then you feel that can have a negative impact on a lot of people.
And then there's like, you binge because it's like, well, I didn't have that. And then I have a cheat day and then you eat more. And it can be a damaging dynamic.
Guilty cycle.
Yes. A guilty cycle and a withholding things, and then you get the reward, and it creates this thing in your brain of like, okay, if I'm eating good, I'm not eating these things. When I'm eating bad, I'm eating these things. I feel like there's a lot of people categorizing foods of like, this is a bad food and this is a good food. And I think that can be really damaging, because if you're saying I am eating a bad food, your body image is probably not going to be very good because you're going to feel bad about yourself after you eat it.
Right, right. Or if somebody has a positive body image, they'll say, yeah, well, it's bad and I treated myself to it.
Right.
And they're just going to let it go.
It's not going to be internalized.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But people like moralize food almost of like this, and then there's so much weight that food holds. And
it can be a source of comfort for a lot of people.
It can, yeah.
So being able to acknowledge that and, and that's where I guess counseling comes in to play that can be very helpful because it's going through a process of learning about what your triggers are, how you react to them, and you ultimately have a choice, but kind of having a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
This is a healthy choice. This is not a healthy choice. And what are you going to do in this situation?
Right.
So,
and then what do you think about like registered dietitians, like working with someone where, or nutritionists where they can look at, what do you have insulin resistance? Do you have these health concerns and also, weight management and things like that? Do you think that's a good resource for people?
I actually really like registered dietitians. I often will refer patients if they have metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance or diabetes. Insurance covers it at different levels depending on the diagnosis. So you have to kind of work with your patient and they might have to do some research and you work together. It's a partnership to help support them accessing those resources. But I think sometimes people in their zeal to eat really healthy, that might look to somebody like non-fat, low carbs, when in the reality, if you research what do non-fat foods have that make them that fill up that spot of the
sugar.
fat, right? So it's a lot of sugar, it's a lot of sodium. And so I think if people can learn how to eat appropriate portions, and I think that's where registered dietitians come into, because in a primary care setting, they don't have all of this time to go and educate on food per se. And that's where you can collaborate with another specialty to help support that person, learning more about foods and what type of energy it provides. Because fats are not bad.
Yes.
I mean,
that
we
was
need
very
fats
like 2000s
to satiate us, right?
Literally, yeah. I remember all the low fat things, the 100-calorie snack packs, like from
I remember
Costco.
All that.
And it was like, these are so good and they're low calories. It's like, do you look at what's in those?
I know.
It's like so bad.
So it's just eating like basic foods.
Yeah, like I know when I like cook for myself and I make a yummy meal, it doesn't necessarily need to be like the healthiest in the terms of like no carbs or no fats. I always feel good about myself of like, I'm fueling my body. I'm giving it complex carbs. I'm giving it, proteins and fats, and it's balanced. And I think that is so much more of a positive self-image or body image over, okay, what was the lowest calories I could consume in the day? Like that doesn't make me feel good at the end of the day. I think it's mindful to know how many calories you eat. But I think if you focus first on the foods and the types of foods you're eating and true like nutrition on what it's at a macro, nutrient level and micro, but I think that's so powerful. It is another form of healthy affirmation to yourself where you can say, oh, this was like a positive thing I did for myself, not I got a like on Instagram or a comment. There's ways. And I think that goes back to our conversation of how to create a healthy body image is doing things for yourself, fueling your body, finding things that create longevity in our kind of body image, less than like the initial comment, like a compliment that's going to be fleeting,
Right. And just like you said, self-awareness. When I prepare a meal that is balanced, carbs, complex carbs, protein, when you finish eating, you typically feel good.
Yeah, and satiated.
And it will carry you through the day. Like you need that protein to help carry you, and you need that fat to help carry you. But working with a registered dietitian and a primary care physician, you can learn lots of things. And, maybe some primary care physicians, maybe they're really not going to be in that kind of mindset to help you. But you would have to ask and inquire and shop around as a consumer.
Advocate for yourself.
And advocate for yourself.
Totally.
But developing that self-awareness of when you feel hungry, when you feel full, knowing what your limits are. And registered dietitians will help teach you that. But one of the real quick things that I can do for my patients is just hold out my flat hand, looking at the palm of my hand, and just drawing a circle on it. And I'm doing this because somebody did it to me one time.
Oh, yeah?
And they said, you know what? Chris, that's all you need.
Yeah.
What fits on the palm of your hand, which is like the size of a card from a deck of cards, is how much protein you eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, what it boils down to is having self-awareness, having some discipline, allowing for failures, understanding what's happening at the cellular level when you feed your body certain foods that satiate you and taking you and carrying you through, and seeing exercise in a different light rather than looking at it something torturous that you have to do.
Right.
Think about how it's sustaining your life. Think about the cardiovascular impact on keeping your heart healthy, your circulatory system healthy. And by way of doing that, if you do it at a pace that's adequate, I tell patients just get hot and sweaty. That's kind of how I measure it for them. Getting your heart rate elevated, but not too elevated. You want to be able to recover quickly, not being able to talk in full sentences, just short, brief sentences if you had a workout partner, but recovering when you're finished and doing it for about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you can't do 30 minutes, I don't know, start with 10. Work to 15, work up to 30, and then let it carry you. Maybe with your schedule, you can't afford 30 minutes 5 times a week.
Right.
So work to do like 40-minute intervals. But understand where stretching exercises can be beneficial. Weightlifting and strengthening exercises are going to help bone density. And appreciating what's going on that is giving you longevity. And make it a project, maybe do some research. But you really have to tackle it from so many different perspectives to understand it, rather than making it something that you dread.
Yeah. Going back to our self-image or our body image, that's going to give us really amazing body image to think, look at how much I care about myself, to carve out 30 minutes of my day, to think about myself when I'm grocery shopping. I think that is so much more positive in how we can feel about ourselves versus getting influxed with, I don't look like that.
Right. Yeah. And when we see that person at the gym that we're like, wow, look at what great shape they're in. Maybe approach them and give the gift of a compliment.
Right.
Because when you can compliment somebody else, that kind of gives something back to you.
Totally.
You're able to say, oh my gosh, I really admire your physique.
Yeah.
And then move on. But we're not all going to look like this perfect image.
And we're not going to look like, I'm not going to look like the girl at the gym who's 6 foot and a basketball player. And she's not going to look like me, who was a gymnast and has different body styles. But we can appreciate and that we have beauty, because that's amazing. To especially other women, to be able to lift them up and honor them in a genuine way. I think genuine compliments is amazing and so and great for people's body image. When people are getting an influx of, oh my gosh, she looks so good. Right. When it's just,
because then they need
that. But when I think that's a beautiful thing to do, for women to be like, you look so strong, are you, and talking about their body in what it does, I think is really cool. Not always what it looks like. I mean, obviously it looks good too, but wow, you lifted so much weight there. Like that was really cool. And like your arms are so strong, or, you could run so far. Like, I feel like it's cool to associate people's compliments with the things they do.
Right. And kind of like we were talking about a few moments ago, when you were saying, when you make that meal and you feel good, then knowing also if you overindulge in sugar, how maybe you don't feel so good. And I think this is a really good thing to bring up too. I think people think, gosh, I'm eating all these fruits and it's so healthy for me. And I love to remind people fruits are full of sugar. Yes. So if you can, portion control on fruits and on carbs, and just make sure that you have a healthy balance of everything. Yeah. Our bodies were meant to have a little bit of everything. Totally. With a good proportion. And then also acknowledging when you're working out at the gym versus maybe a day when you don't work out. Kind of compare and contrast. How do I feel one day versus
What's
the
your
other?
energy like? Yeah,
because it kind of feeds you to go, okay, you know what? I feel so much better when I do exercise.
Totally.
So
totally. Yep. Well, great. Thank you so much, Christi. I know we've had this conversation off recording before, so this was fun to do it again. And so thank you so much for joining us again on this podcast. We hope that you enjoyed it. Take care of yourself and be well. For more information about 3W, please visit our website at 3wmedical.org. That's the number 3, the letter W, medical.org.
From there, you can learn more about the services we provide, book an appointment, or make a donation if you'd like to support our mission. You can also call our office at 206-588-0311. That's 206-588-0311. If you liked this episode, please share it with others and consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay healthy and be well.